I just wish there was like some unique gimmick to sell it more than what it is. Because what it is now really is like as bare bones the subclass as you could possibly get. You could just say all these are bard features. I'd be like, yeah, sure, probably, whatever. That's fine. They're except like maybe extra attack. I'd be like, yeah, why not? Maybe this is how you play a subclass martial bard. I don't know. Like none of it feels like a unique lane.
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're digging deeper into the Bard hole with the Valor Bard, the
I love
college,
that.
the College of Valor.
I
Yes,
love that it makes no sense. Like digging deeper into the bard hole. What
makes
does it
perfect
matter?
sense.
All right, sure. I think Valor Bards have always been kind of crappy. They're a little bit worse than swords in my like personal opinion as far as like game mechanics go, like interesting wise. Power, they're fine. I think they upgrade your Bardic Inspiration in a kind of fine way. But beyond that, it's like what you see is what you get. If you want to play a martial bard, this is a super serviceable one to go with. You'll
Having
just
trouble picturing a Valor Bard. I guess it's supposed to be like an old warrior poet or something, but
yeah,
I'm
or maybe
I'm
like the
having a hard time, separating my own vision of what a bard is, a deity, and now he's just a goofy looking guy with armor and a bigger sword than he
sure.
should have.
I think they're trying very hard to make Bard not just that. Because if you think about the other classes, right, Druid is also kind of has this problem where it's a fairly narrow character archetype. But if you look at like clerics can be a whole bunch of different things. Fighters
Yeah.
can be literally any warrior that has ever existed, right? Rogues have a wide gallery of scoundrels that they can look like. But bards tend to look like the smooth talking, loot bearing idiot. And I love that character archetype, but they can do other things. And I think this is a kind of character where I would be like, I'm thinking frontline, a war band. They have the drums that are inspiring the martial prowess, and then they're smashing those drums over people's heads. That's the kind of character that I envision in a high fantasy, like a whimsical kind of high fantasy way using this thing. I think it's neat though.
Yeah.
So when we start this option off at third level, you get bonus proficiencies. So you gain proficiency with medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. That's all great. Now you only need a +2 dex, and you're probably going to have around a +2 dex, and you're likely going to be using a short sword, and that maybe you'll go with something bigger if you want to go strength build with this. But given that you don't really get a lot of reward for attacking, you just kind of get the ability to attack. I think a lot of the time you're going to default to using spells, especially in the upper tiers. But hey, if you're only playing like levels 1 through 9, you can probably do some cool stuff with some feats and some builds. You can have a good time with it, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
And the feat
Are
you
we?
get is
Is this going to sound a lot like our swords bard
yeah,
video? Yeah. All right.
almost identical in every way, except they get a different third level feature and kind of a different 14th level feature. But like, you don't get instead of getting the cool maneuvers and fighting styles, you get combat inspiration. And combat inspiration says also at third level, you learn to inspire others. A creature that has bardic inspiration die from you can roll the die and add that number rolled to the weapon damage roll it just made. Alternatively, when an attack roll is made against the creature, it can use the reaction to roll the bardic inspiration die and add the number rolled to its AC against the attack after seeing the roll before knowing whether it hits or misses. So like, it's fine. Normally adding an AC bump to attack, whenever the dice size is large enough, it will be better than advantage or disadvantage often, especially if you already have a particularly high AC. So like if you're rocking with an AC of 17 or 18, adding 6 or 7 onto that is usually more worth it than giving that thing disadvantage or subtracting it from their attack roll or whatever. I guess it's kind of the same from subtracting from the attack roll, but the gist of it is you'll be able to maybe block a hit with this. Bardic inspirations are still kind of clunky to give out at time of recording. In the future, they're going to be easier to give out, and this option, I'm assuming, is going to get a little bit reworked. But for what this is, I think your game plan looks pretty straightforward. You're going to inspire some others to do more damage on hit, get dodge some attacks, and I would encourage you to try to do more damage with it than dodge attacks, but it's not a lot of damage. And then otherwise, you're a bard with medium armor and martial weapons. Like
Well, I guess it depends on the
otherwise.
attack, right? If you're inspiring somebody's attack and they don't attack for much versus defending an attack that's pretty big, then yeah, it's a difference.
you'll pick your spots, right? I think
Yeah.
more often than not, I would expect, like I tend to always say, I value ending fights, not prolonging them. So when if you have that option between taking 7 damage now or dealing 5 damage now, I'm gonna tend to favor the dealing the 5 damage now.
Mm.
Um, and again, it's obviously going to be circumstantial. If it saves you from going under or taking, all of your hit points in one blow or half your hit points in one blow, obviously you're trying to go for the AC bump.
Yeah.
That little decision point isn't really on you though, as the bard. You're just going to make someone
No.
else make that decision for you. So you just decide to give these out, and it has the core problem Bardic Inspiration kind of has, but I don't think I really touch on. But a lot of time you just like go, I don't know what to do with these. You have one, and then they go, I don't know what to do with this either, and then that it
Well, I
just
mean, it's pretty
lasts till it ends, and
straightforward
you're
what to
sad.
do with it.
But so like there's always this awkwardness where you don't know when you want to use it and you don't know if you're going to need to use it. So you'll give it out.
Mm.
They'll roll a 15 on their next attack roll, they'll roll a 17 on their next attack roll, and the encounter's over. And they'll just kind of like be like, I guess it's done and I didn't need it. And then some other guy will be like, I rolled a 3 and I rolled a 6, and neither of those were going to get saved by this Bardic
Right.
Inspiration die, and that feels crappy. So it's only really whenever you hit that sweet spot where someone gets like an 11 and it's real close to hitting, and then you go, okay, well now you can add it to the hit. This at least kind of shores that up because you're a lot more certain you're going to do damage. And if you, just as a word of advice, if you can use things and know they'll do something, do it, because Bardic Inspiration has that problem of some I don't know if it's going to do anything, and they do definitely fix that coming forward. But as is, that is not the case.
Yeah. Especially
But
if
yeah,
it's not something like a potion where you can just hang on to it for whenever.
yeah. Notably, I didn't harp on this whenever we were doing the Swords Bard review, and I probably should have mentioned it. Because this is competing with a resource and not giving you more of uses of it, it is not great because if you wanted to use those resources in the other way, if you wanted to use Bardic Inspiration die to empower ability checks, to empower on-hit attack rolls, you can't do that anymore, right? Like you are competing with this feature, they're using the same pool. You can use them in more different ways,
I mean,
but
you
you don't
can
get
still
extra
do it.
uses. Yes,
Okay.
but this is, as a whole feature, isn't a new pillar or a new thing you can
Right,
do. A
right.
new expansion of your resources is a competing resource, which
Yeah.
is a little bit clunkier than other features that exist in this game, right? If we compare this to some other, side, like the side point subclasses, like Soul Knife, it gets a whole new suite of things to do alongside the rogues based stuff. This isn't a new stuff to do alongside being a bard. It's just now you can use the resources in a slightly different way, but you don't get more of them, get or anything like that. That is a knock against it, I think. But I mean, there's not much more to say. It's only one attack. It's not as good as shield, but it will block an important attack from now and then. Adding it to damage in the upper tiers is going to feel inconsequential. You're like, oh great, I add a 6 to this 48 to 50 damage hit roll. I guess it adds up, but like it doesn't feel nearly as good as it does at level 2 or level 3 or 4 whenever you're like, oh, that actually is almost doubling this damage sometimes. So
Yeah,
it doesn't scale great.
they should take scaling into account. I hope that's I mean, I know the new book's out for some people, but I hope it's been taken more into account at least.
I don't know. I am skeptical that things are going to improve at the upper levels in the new edition, but we'll touch on that when we get there.
Yep.
We got extra attack coming in at 6th level, which is just fine. It now says I can do martial things and I can be a martial character, and this is the bare minimum that you kind of need to do martial things. This lets you, with magical secrets, kind of like build into it if you want. You could do some X stuff. You could do some, fire shield, tank bard, tacky stuff. Mix and match and kind of pick your own spells in the bard class when you get magical secrets. So attaching that to extra attack, maybe you have some potential. Maybe take Banishing Smite. The fact that you get it with full caster slots does make it feel a lot better than it does whenever Paladin gets it at 13th level, right? You can do some
Yeah.
things that will feel better, specifically because you're a bard with extra attack, to kind of do this hybrid play pattern. Now, there's the real problem, which is like very quickly after 6th level, you'll have to ask yourself the question, would my actions be better spent doing anything else? And the answer is usually yes. It's usually better spent casting big explosive splashy spells, giant area effect
Right.
saber dies, giant, world impactful. Find your resources aren't as tight as they are in the low tiers as you continue to progress, so you'll want to spend your spell slots. And that means you're not taking the attack action, because that attack action is probably like, unless you're really building into it, I attack twice with a longsword, or I attack with a short sword twice and have a shield, and then I'm like, now what? Not great.
Yeah, well, we talked about that with the Swords Bard, and yeah, unless there's some kind of combination where you've got like a spell that really enhances your attacks, then I don't know.
I mean, I would also say, like, this option isn't going to do anything powerfully. I think if you want to play a bard that wants to predominantly attack and you're like, you just decide, I think it looks cooler and I enjoy playing it more to just take the attack action and use my spells out of combat and for utility stuff, this is fine. 95% plus of tables are going to have that be a perfectly serviceable character. Like, it's not going to blow anyone out of the water. The paladins are going to make you feel like a dork. But, like, you will not be have that bad of a time, I don't think.
Well, I mean, if that's what you want, you could be a fighter and take magic initiative.
Yeah, but this gives you full casting and you get to do the bard stuff. So I do think
Yeah.
there are real reasons that this differentiates itself. I don't think this at all differentiates itself from swords, and I would advocate playing swords over this because I think combat inspiration is on average weaker feature and like less. When I say weaker feature, I think it does a worse job fulfilling a specific look. And I think that if it's not going to be powerful, at least it needs to sell a fantasy. And I don't really see this like selling the fantasy all that much outside of just giving you extra attack, right?
No.
Um,
Maybe it'll save itself on the capstone.
No, Battle Magic's way you get to 14th level, and I don't honestly hate this thing that much. So it says you've mastered the art of weaving, spellcasting, and weapon to use a single harmonious act. When you use your action to cast a bard spell, you can make an attack as a bonus action. So now you kind of get that big payoff. Now they did at least reckon and say you want to do attacky stuff, but you also want to cast all your spells because you're a full caster. So now you can kind of do both. The rub is though this is using a bonus action, which are really tight for bards, and you have to be within 5 feet of things, and one attack is not two, so your extra attack feature's still dead. Like, there's a lot of little things that really make this kind of go, it's kind of consolation prize.
And also, every time you use it, you'll be reminded that, oh, my spell casting is so much more powerful than my attack action.
Generally speaking, yeah. This is not a complicated option. It's not supposed to be. I think if you're like playing a bard for the first time and you're like, I already have so much to deal with spells. I'm feeling like there's too many spells and too many decisions. I don't want to have to make as many decisions. I just want to be able to attack things a little bit. I do think this is actually a perfectly serviceable on-ramp. I think if you like Champion Fighter and you want to start delving a little bit more into the game, this is actually a pretty good route to explore because it still lets you do the bare bones that you're used to. It lets you commit to the combat stuff, but it gently encourages you to instead pursue what do your spells look like? How can your spells engage in combat here? How can you learn the spellcasting system while still having the comfort of, I still make extra attacks. I can always default to my greatsword. I can always, hit things with stick if I feel bad about it. And I like that option existing. I just wish there was like some unique gimmick to sell it more than what it is. Because what it is now really is like as bare bones the subclass as you could possibly get. You could just say all these are bard features. I'd be like, yeah, sure, probably, whatever. That's fine. They're except like maybe extra attack. I'd be like, yeah, why not? Maybe this is how you play a subclass martial bard. I don't know. Like none of it feels like a unique lane. Like in options like spirits, you feel like you're a soothsayer.
Right.
With this one, you're like, I'm a bard with extra attack and kind of get to paint my own picture of it. I wish it gave you a little bit more direction to like inspire painting more, specific fantasies.
Yeah, well, that's what combat inspiration is supposed to do.
And it just doesn't, right?
Well, because it's already bardic inspiration. Like,
yeah,
you're
and that
inspiring
already
people
works
already.
in combat.
Yeah.
Right? Bardic inspiration already adds to hit. So like, and honestly, that matters a lot more than adds to damage. So I don't know.
It's interesting what you said about going from champion fighter to like it's not a big stretch to College of Valor bard. I'd like to see like this graph or tree of like different subclasses that are kind of related to each other, and
Yeah,
that could be interesting.
Agreed. Maybe we'll work something up someday for it and be like, here's a chart of how everything interconnects across subclasses. That would be like a 3-dimensional bizarre chart to look at. Anyway, I'm gonna give this thing a D. I don't think it's very good, but I do think Ds aren't unusable. It's just, I mean, every feature, like the best feature I think you get is the proficiencies at the end of the day. Like you are a full caster, so you're gonna want to do full caster stuff generally, and there isn't any payoff for taking the attack action. So you're not like doing anything differently or better than anyone else, and that's gonna again default to most of the time you just wanting to be a full caster. That doesn't mean you can't do the attack action stuff. Doesn't mean you can't build around it. Doesn't mean you can't have a Valor Bard that you personalize and make your own. I honestly think again at most tables it'll be fine. It's just not particularly powerful nor particularly inspirational.
Yeah, it's not seeing a lot of great stuff in these features, especially when you compare it to swords. And
the swords is not a good subclass either, right?
No.
Like swords is very mediocre. You're still not having good reason to take the attack action most of the time. Like I gave that one a C. I think this gets a D, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. D it is. All right. Do better, College of Valor Bard. Maybe we'll see you again in the next version.
Maybe.
All right. That was College of Valor. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.